Hi, thanks for your interest in the C4 Waterman Vortice XP. This is our top-of-the-line race board. It's constructed by Karel Tresnek from Outrigger Connection, one of the finest builders in the industry for one-man canoes and six-man canoes in the outrigger canoe industry. We have licensed him to build our Vortice XP. What we have here is a more technically advanced board that's made of carbon fiber, hollow molded. So it's very lightweight, very fast, very responsive. Combine that with its unique, innovative design that matches a blend between a lay-down kneel paddleboard, a stand-up board, and a one-man canoe. And what we have is the Vortice XP, a very fast, agile, open ocean racing board. This board is not for surfing, it's for open ocean racing and not for catching waves that are breaking. To explain a little bit more about the design of this race board, the Vortice XP, I thought it was real important to let you know what went into the concepts of why we designed this. This generation board goes back 8 different tests and prototypes before we came up with this design. And so what's important about this design is the fact how you use the rocker of this board. The rocker is almost like gears. This board is set up for racing, and similar to a car that has gears, there's neutral, first, second, third, and fourth. This board does the same thing. So by utilizing the rocker effectively, you can utilize different speed ratios in different conditions. It's very, very effective. Let's start out first with what the gears are on this. Again, the rocker is a very important part of this board, and utilizing the rocker is very important. That's why we don't use a ruddered board or something with a rudder system. We would prefer to not have a rudder system. That way you're not stagnant on the board and you're able to utilize this rocker. What we've done on this board, and what I recommend you do, is I put stickers in the center point of this board, the center of the rocker. And what that does is it teaches me and tells me where neutral is, the neutral gear on this board. So when I paddle this board, I always find myself in the sweet spot of this rocker, which is right there in the center of the rocker. And I would call that neutral gear. So this neutral gear is where you would stand when you're just basically paddling in any conditions. And it's always back to this position, whether you're in flat water, rough water, or whatever. This is the neutral position. Now, based on what you're trying to do or what conditions get thrown at you is where we shift gears and change the aspect of the rocker in the water. Now we'll go into second gear, what I call second gear, and that would be about 6 to 8 inches forward on from your center neutral rocker. Okay, what this does is pushes the rocker forward and lets the board sit closer on the front of the trough of the wave. I use this position when I'm paddling in very small chop or upwind. This is a very effective position to put the rocker of the board so you can drive into the wind or push the rocker down into small waves. What it does, it allows the rocker to fit in the small chop and help you drop in a little bit quicker. It's a very fast part of the board is forward on it like this. One of the reasons why we like this gear, or second gear, is to help us drop into the wave. But we've got to be careful utilizing this gear and forward on the rocker, because if the swell gets large and you get into it, you can start to pearl the nose. That's where you step back into what I call third gear, which would be back here about 8 inches behind your neutral zone that we've set up. Now this zone we use when the water gets really rough and you want to get on the back side of the rocker. And one of the reasons we get back on the back side of the rocker on big waves is because we compress the bottom rocker. By compressing the bottom rocker as the swell picks you up, the board wants to launch forward, which again will help you propel quicker into the wave when it's of large size. Okay, so now we've seen where our neutral spot is, or gear 1, gear 2, gear 3, based on different conditions. Now one trick that I use is when catching bumps is you can basically step back to do quick gear changes by just moving one foot. If you're uncomfortable moving your whole self, you can move either forward or backwards and change the rocker aspect while you're in the bump, to do it on the fly. Now let's say we're in some really big water in a big ocean and you're back here in third gear and you're catching a big bump. You can even step back even further on this board and go right into your surfing stance, which is what I recommend. And that's the fun part of this board. Once you catch these waves, you can go into your surfing stance and actually turn this board like you would a regular surfboard in the open ocean. It's a lot of fun moving back and forth on the rocker, utilizing this board to get the best speed you can. Now, if you catch a really good sized swell and you're dropping in, that's where the fun begins, because this board turns into a surfboard. And you can step back, go into your surfing stance, and literally surf the open ocean swells. This board is light enough and fast enough that some of the runs you could get are up to 300 yards. It's pretty amazing. Step back up to neutral, catch your next wave, step back into your surf stance, and surf away on the open ocean. 10, 12, 13 miles of surfing. It's a lot of fun. One of the things that people ask questions about is, without a rudder system, because there are a lot of boards out there with rudder systems, how do you go into the wind and how do you compensate for that? Well, this board was designed to not necessarily need a rudder. Many of the rudder boards, even though you have a rudder to control the board, you're still having to paddle on one side. So what ends up happening is, not only are you cheating the rudder, but you're also still paddling on the same side. So what we've designed is a bottom that utilizes the channels. So when you go into the wind or you're going crosswind, we get way forward on the rocker. And what that does is it lets the board go to weather, or telltale as they call it, which means it wants to round up into the wind and utilize the channels in this board. So you don't have to have a rudder system. So what that means is that you're going to be paddling faster into the wind with less drag off the bottom. Many boards, the first thing you want to do when you start getting stuck into the wind is step back on the tail and try and paddle it around. This board is different. You get forward on the rocker, you paddle into the wind, and the board will automatically utilize its bottom shape and rail design to drive you into the wind comfortably and fast. Our next thing is real important when we're catching bumps on this wave. That's the whole reason why we're paddling these boards, is to get the most speed out of the water, and that's what this was designed for. What we want to do is, you want to let this board do what it needs to do with its glide. So as the bump picks you up, you let the board load up on the lower end of the bump. As it picks you up and pushes it forward, you can take a few strokes and fall into the wave. What you don't want to do is continue to try to paddle up the back of the wave. At that point, sit, relax, and let the board do what it's supposed to do. Take that time and it'll run much faster, and you'll be able to do longer runs with less fatigue. Racing boards. These boards are different than your standard surfboard. Because they have a lot of glide, we want to utilize that glide. That's why when you take a stroke on this board, we want to limit the body position and the body push. So what we do is, the stroke is the top body is stable, then chin is up, and everything drives off the shoulder, very similar to how we paddle an outrigger canoe. We want to keep the body position and the body weight stable. If we start throwing it around like this board is so agile and so lively that you'll actually affect the performance of the board by just moving around on it. So it's real important that you have a really clean, crisp stroke as you paddle this board. Download all 4 videos of the Vortice XP series, starting with Versatility with Dave Parmenter and Brian Kailana, Paddling Techniques with Todd Bradley and Malika Dudley, Do's and Don'ts of the Care for your Vortice XP with Karel Tresnek, and Racing Tips and Techniques with Todd Bradley. Enjoy.